Leadership Story Talks, where we discuss the practices that engage, motivate, develop, retain, and attract people to businesses. We'll give you principles and tools based on real-world stories to leverage listening and storytelling to become a better leader and management professional. Leadership Story Talks is produced by Narativ, a company that focuses on personal storytelling for business.
But once you start getting more familiar with walls, you start recognizing which kind you're finding. And then once you understand why the wall is there, you know exactly what to pick at in order to test it, challenge it, even change it or pull it down. So that was one example of also a hungry college student, single mom, 5 honor societies, summa cum laude, and I opened a nonprofit to feed the hungry, which happened to be people that were just like me. They don't have to be these big walls like AI. They can be helping the person next to you. They can be making something possible that wasn't possible before. It's up to you to tackle which walls you find.
So that was Laura Miller talking to us about AI, and we really had this great discussion, I thought, around, she took this analogy of the walls that are put up and relating AI as one of those walls, and which walls do we need to break down, and what's the next wall we're going to break down. But this quote was interesting to me because it sort of showed me that, something that I really relate to is that we can often think like we're sort of stuck in one story. And I recently had this experience of working with a group where, the organization had been founded fairly recently. And so their story was pretty new. And they felt really good about the story, and justifiably so. And so this thing that I was facilitating was actually their first in-person team retreat. And we started to craft individual stories of each person in the team about the organization. And what was interesting about that is that as the individual stories came out, we started to look at that collective story that had been there for a little while. And they could now start to see, oh, actually, we've achieved some milestones that are not in that story. So it's not like we have to scrap the old story, but we can see how it might evolve. And I think a lot of times the wall in storytelling is the story that you've been telling yourself for a long time. And in our work, we see this a lot where you start to chip away at that story that you've just been telling as a matter of habit. And so now you've got an opportunity to actually add things to it, maybe not entirely take it out, or maybe if that's what you need to do. But that's what we see a lot. That's what kind of this quote reminded me of.
And I thought it was interesting that she approached with this very relatable example because the whole topic of AI is so huge and there's so many different dimensions to it. And she took it forward to something really simple. And it complements a question I've been asking in some sessions is, what is causing you to walk towards maybe an idea, towards or away from an idea, a person or experience, and to develop context. So before we can go through the wall, it's good when we have options to pay attention to what's going on in our head and either get past our own assumptions or the assumptions we're making for somebody else. So it's very artful. I know I've heard that example a couple of times from her, and every time she says it, I'm like, what else can I be learning from this? So.
Yeah. It really caused us, well, me anyway, to it sounds like you as well, to think about what are those walls in our personal, professional lives. And I think that's what we're inviting our listeners to do now is think about, what's that next wall that needs to be taken down or gone through, and the one that's been kind of holding you back, and what's that story that you've been telling yourself regularly that perhaps isn't really serving you anymore. Yeah, you control it. Actually, I think that's the other thing that I got from this group I was working with the last couple of days is, you can shape your narrative. It doesn't control you. And just because all of these things have happened to you, that's not all that happened to you. And so in terms of how you put yourself out there, look at those other things that happened. Look at those the impact you've been making. That's a lot of our work. That's the question I ask often is, where have you contributed? Where have you made an impact? Even if it was 20 years ago. That's, if you start to focus on that, you start to see all these little things that have happened in your life where you've made a contribution that ultimately ended to a pretty big impact. So trust that process and really encourage everyone to do that. Look at that story that you've been telling yourself for a while and see if that's not actually a wall for you. And see how you might mount that wall or move it away and tell a new story, or at least an evolved one. Yeah.
So I think that should be a pulled quote where we ask that question in big, bold red of how does this serve you? What is it
Yeah.
helping you do? And what is it standing in your way? And how is it standing in your way? So I think that's
Love it.
important. And we have to revisit that all the time, constantly. So it's not a one and done.
Right, exactly. Yeah, stories evolve because our lives evolve. So that's necessarily what's going to happen. All right. Well, thanks again for another great debrief episode, and and just kind of the train of thought. And thanks, for introducing us to Laura Miller. That was your connection. So really want to acknowledge you for bringing
she's
her on.
fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you all listeners for tuning in again. And as always, go and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. That drives the word of mouth. Don't forget that we also have a YouTube channel. You can send people over there. And finally, in all the episode notes, you will find lots of information about this podcast and the episode with Laura Miller. And you can go to narativ.com, narativ.com/podcast to find out lots more and get access to lots of stuff. All right. See you soon. See you next time. Thanks so much.
For more information on the narrative listening and storytelling method and how it can help your business, go to narativ.com.